All right, I'm going to go ahead and welcome everybody to the May 29th edition of the All Financial Group semi-weekly town hall. Like everybody, hope you had a great Memorial Day weekend. It's that time to remember those that made this supreme sacrifice so that we would all have the freedoms that we do have today. And I am going to go ahead and we'll give Will a little bit of break since he's trying to figure out maybe that machine downstairs. And Mel, if you don't mind, would you mind going ahead and kicking off this week's town hall?
I'll be happy to. I've got a very interesting subject as far as I'm concerned, and it's from the old quote, "What you don't know can hurt you." And what we have found over time, though, in dealing with hundreds of people, helping them retire, getting ready, and understanding the differences between the area of I've been working for a living and saving for my retirement in the rainy day, and now, okay, I am unemployed and I have to create my own paychecks. So what are some of the things? And I'm not going to spend a ton of time going through what each of these are in detail. I'm just going to go over a list. First of all, we found clients who were preparing to retire and did not know that Social Security would be taxed, did not know that Medicare is not free. You have to pay for Part A, no, not Part A, Part B. And then that doesn't cover all the costs. So you either have to have an Advantage plan or a supplement plan. And how much you pay for Part B is directly related to what your income is. The more monies that you have as an income each year, the more you might have to pay for Medicare Part B. And one of the things that can affect that is doing Roth conversions. So this is another point. Roth conversions is not a straightforward, if I convert and pay the taxes now, it'll take me this many years to get my break-even point. It's more complicated than that because you're anticipating potential tax rate changes that might occur in the future that would make a difference. How much money you have in IRAs versus non-qualified funds, because you may spend that money to use it to live off of. So there's not a lot of point in doing the conversions. It wouldn't make any sense to pay the taxes, convert it, and then spend it anyway. It's just not to your advantage unless you keep it for a very long period of time or are thinking about passing it on to the children. Second thing people don't know in some cases, when you leave an IRA or a 401k or a Roth IRA to your children or other heirs than your spouse, there is a 10-year rule. It didn't used to exist. It's only been around a few years, but there was a lot of work done for a long time with what we call stretch IRAs, where the heirs could inherit, take an RMD for and let the money grow tax deferred or even tax free in a Roth's case for a whole generation and then leave it to the next generation. And unfortunately, that's not true anymore. Now there is a 10-year rule that applies to how long you have to take out the money. With a Roth, you can let it sit and grow untouched for up to 10 years and then pull it out tax-free, but you have to take it all out of the Roth. And well, then what do you do with it? Well, then you have to reinvest it in some other way, which will probably create additional taxation, or very well could. With an IRA, you still are required to do required minimum distributions, okay, if the IRA was inherited after a certain time. If it was before a certain time, you don't have to do this. So again, it's complicated knowing what the rules are. But most of the qualified funds today that you might currently inherit, you do have to do something with them within that 10-year period. Then there's the case of Social Security. People always want to talk about, well, when should I take my Social Security? That is not an easy math question either. It's very easy to figure out what the maximum result would be. If you're both going to live to 100, then you should both wait till 70. That'll give you the maximum payout because you got that roll up until age 70 and you got a lot of years to get those bigger checks. But if one of you might be in better health than the other, if you have more or less Social Security, IRA money, I should say, tax deferred money, that can make a difference. If you're not going to spend it all, that can make a difference. So there's just an awful lot of things that go into it. And then there's the case of, well, if I start my Social Security earlier, I'll have more IRA money left over because it'll set and grow and get bigger, but then my RMDs are bigger. So this is not a straightforward, easy question. And I've already named about 5 things that are interrelated to each other, that doing one thing over here affects 2 or 3 other things. If you work for a particular company, say you work for XYZ, and in your 401k, you have purchased a lot of that company's stock as part of your IRA, or 401k, I should say. There's a thing called net unrealized appreciation that a lot of people don't know about. And it works a little bit like this. If you're about to retire and you want to I'll make up an imaginary example. Let's say that you've put in $100,000 as part of your cost basis inside your 401k for the stocks that you bought. Now, this only works for the company in which you are retiring from, that you have a 401k with. But let's say that $100,000 is now worth $200,000. Well, if you leave it in the 401k, 100% of that $200,000 is taxable as ordinary income, and you have to take required minimum distributions. If you roll it to an IRA, same issue. Completely generates an ordinary income tax every time you spend one of those dollars. However, you can take that stock and move it outside of your 401k into a non-qualified account. You are removing it from the deferred category altogether. You then would have to pay the income tax on the $100,000 that you put in. Ordinary income tax. But that other 100 that I talked about, you would be able to let it set and grow. And if you do spend that money, you pay capital gains taxes on that, not ordinary income. So if you do the net unrealized appreciation, you have the ability to pay capital gains taxes on the gains, but you only paid ordinary income tax on the cost basis. So that's a substantial tax savings for people who might have a lot of stock in their current company, in their 401k that they might be retiring from. Let's talk about a whole other thing in the legacy issue. People don't understand wills and trust. There's a lot of misinformation out there. People think, well, if I have a will, that will avoid probate. No, it won't. Okay. If you have a proper beneficiary listing on some of your assets, that very well could avoid probate, because if I said, hey, Will, is going to inherit my IRA and he's listed as a beneficiary, then it's his. There's no court required. There's no probate, no lawyers. It goes directly to that beneficiary, as long as there's no lawsuits against other people that might want to make a claim on it. But even then, there's no real position for them to do that without just going out and hiring lawyers and starting the trust, because there's no probate involved there. So life insurance, annuities, 401ks, 403bs, a lot of different accounts can be set up with a beneficiary. You can have non-qualified accounts set up with transfer on death. You can have a house that might be paid for as transfer on death. You can leave your car as a beneficial deed on that. There's a lot of things you can do that leave assets to the next generation that bypass the will and or the trust. But if you have in your will, Will gets my gun collection and Steve gets my cars, okay, that is not a direct transfer. That it has to actually go through probate to make sure that there are no liens against the cars or the guns or things of that nature before that gets transferred to them. So I mean, it's a very simplistic analysis, but that's a really, really strong case. Well, we were talking to a client this morning that has a family farm situation where this land is here and it's an in-law deal, and it's all going to be passed through a trust. And there's a lot of concern on my part about how that might pan out in the future, because anytime you got 5 different people trying to make a decision about which land belongs to which person, it gets real complicated. And I suggested that they talk to an attorney about a family limited partnership to hold that land. It could save a lot of headaches in the future and make sure that the right pieces go to the right people and there's no real confusion, and at least less of that. So I talked about beneficiary listings. I talked about the state issues. You talked about IRAs and Roths and 401ks and taxation on Social Security and Medicare costs, net unrealized appreciation. Those are only a few quick things. I wrote that list down in about a minute and a half. That's how long it took to write just those things down. It takes a little bit longer to talk about them. But my point is this. if Steve and I and Will sat down and said, okay, let's enumerate all the different things that people don't know, or the little gotchas, or the, oh, you should have done this, you should have done it that way, that you would have to go out and research. You would have to Google the heck out of this. And even then, you're going to get conflicting information. There is a ton of things that people don't know until they have the problem. So back to my premise today, what you don't know can hurt you. Having a financial professional with a lot of experience that can sit down and talk about the pitfalls of any decision you want to make, anything you want to talk about, one of the things that we can bring to the table is, here are the pros, here are the cons, here's the things you got to be concerned about, and doing this will affect these other things. Now, in the last 5 or 10 minutes that I've been talking, I haven't talked about whether you should have stocks or bonds or annuities or structured notes or land or rental properties or business. I haven't talked about any of that. This is just all the different decision processes that we haven't even really scratched the surface of all the things you need to know. I said this earlier to a client this week, said, you're retiring for the first time in your life and probably the last time. We retire people 3 to 6 times a month. And it's a lot of knowledge that goes along with this particular process that we're more than willing to share with you. So all I would recommend to you is that if you're looking at facing decisions about retirement, what to do, when to do, Social Security, taxation, estate planning, income planning, any of that stuff, you should consult a professional. You should absolutely sit down with someone that is involved in the planning process just as much as they are the investment process. And that's really the root of our firm, quite honestly, is it's probably as much or more planning than it is the investment structures. But obviously the investments in annuities and life insurance, it's all a big part of it, and understanding how those tools work. The trick is knowing which tool to use and when and how they affect each other. So that was my portion for today.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mel. Now we're going to turn it over to Mr. Will down in the radio recording room. So Will, it's on you now, son.
Well, thank you so much, Mel. There's a lot of things going through my mind with all the things that you just said. And one of the things about whatever we don't know, it can't hurt you, is my first check whenever I came to the States, and I used to be a busboy at Olive Garden. That week, I did the math, was $9 an hour. I worked probably 50 hours. And I multiplied, said, I will be able to have around $400, $500 this week. It will be great. I got my check and I saw all these deductions coming out. And I was going back to my car, opening my check and coming back to say to my boss, what is this? What is my money? And that takes me to the day now of planning, of talking to clients every day. And one of the things I also want to talk about is what is going on with the real estate market right now. We just talked to a client today about downsizing, taking the next step. When is the right moment to leave your asset or liquidate your asset, right? It's the same whenever you make the decision to retire. You sometimes think that it won't be the best decision right now. It's a little bit scary, right? But that's why you sit with professionals. That's why every Monday, the 4 of us with David, we analyze exactly what can you do for your business, for your retirement. And that idea is right now, we see it all the time. I'm in the market too. Like I was telling Mel this morning, every time I get into Zillow, one house, I get a suggestion of a house, I see it on my phone, I send it to my wife, and the first thing she says, already pending. Someone already made an offer for the house. So it is a hot market. So we hearing a lot of people trying to downsize. It's like, hey, the house is too big for me. Like we're 2 right now. It's probably time to just move, right? It is the right time to do it, but I don't know. I want to retire the next year. Can I do that? What can I do? So all these questions we added to everything that Mel said a few minutes ago. There is so much things that emotionally hurt us and sometimes blind us and don't let us to make the right decision. But that's why we're here. That's why we can help. That's why we can analyze every time that you talk to us about your business, about your life, about your plans. So I just wanted to add that. I think that was great. And I always try to mirror my experience and mirror things that happened to me before. I believe stories are great to share it, and people associate that.
All righty. Well, thank you very much, Will. And I'm going to go in a slightly different direction. You know, I had that call earlier in the week. Steve, the Federal Reserve said they were going to cut rates 6 times this year. Now they're talking about possibly raising it, or they're not going to start lowering it till next year. You know, what should I do with cash that I have sitting on the sidelines? Should I invest? Or should I just keep it in those higher interest rates right now? And I look at it right now that it is nice to have the availability for small amounts of what we call emergency funds in an account that is making more than 0.000. You put the number behind it, because people didn't like the fact that their money markets or CDs weren't paying anything. Well, right now they are paying a little bit more. But the question that I have to look at is money markets and CDs have never kept up with inflation. So we have to look at it. Where is the best place? I am a big advocate of cash is king. It does have it. If you're looking to say, what am I going to do with it? And when am I going to do something? So that's where I look at it. When interest rates are higher like they are right now, the insurance companies have a lot more, quote, leeway, because the bonds that they're going to be buying are paying higher. So those fixed indexed annuities that we might have bought 3, 4, 5 years ago, we might have the availability to replace those. If I have an income rider attached to it and I haven't turned it on, it could be very advantageous to look at it and say, if I exchange this, could I get a better income for the money that I currently have in that fixed indexed annuity? So those are the things that we would say, let's look at that. You know, if you're not our client and you have a fixed index annuity that you haven't turned on the income, give us a call. Let's do an annuity x-ray on it and see what could happen. And then we also have the ones that, if you look from our practice, that were bought for protected growth. We didn't attach an income rider. Why? Because that income rider costs money. We just want that protected growth. We want that asset that can't go down due to market volatility. Well, again, because interest rates are higher, there might be a better rate of return with either caps, participation rates, you know, lower spreads. There's a whole lot of things. If you did exchange an annuity, you might have an additional surrender charge. So we do have to weigh that when we're looking at it for you all. So those are the things that we would look at in the fixed indexed annuity world. The other thing that I look at is a lot of people are saying, hey, with all the craziness that's going on, you know, when should I get in the market? That's what I love. 1 year ago, we made the decision to go with Brad Jenkins and Market Guard. Why? Because they've got the aggressive portfolios for you out there that are more aggressive. We got the MGOP. We've got the new Emerging Technology Fund. They're aggressive. They're 100% in equities. But we also have the availability to take risk-adjusted returns. Static, only adjust for drift. So it's going to be more, we're going to hold it and figure out what it does by the end of the year, and then it rebalances. Targets. A lot of the target funds right now are not fully invested. And some people have called and said, Steve, why are we holding a little bit extra bonds in this account? And I said, well, that's what the models are telling Brad to do right now. I said, would you agree with me that we might have a few headwinds out there? A Federal Reserve that we're not sure what they were going to do. We've got inflation that we're not sure what's going to happen. A presidential election. Problems in the Ukraine and problems over in Israel. Enough questions to say this might be a time to be a little bit more defensive. And that's what I love about the market guard philosophy is we can cover whichever base that you're comfortable with. I think it's time to be aggressive. I think it's time to back off. And what I love about it when Market Guard does it, you know, their proprietary methodology, non-emotional, mathematical, and methodical. So that it's not how do I feel about this today? The models are doing it. And make sure the clients, when we get those reports from Brad every month about what's going on with his portfolios, we send them to you, our clients, so that you can watch it. So if you see one of those reports, go ahead and watch it. That way you can see what the guy that's actually making the investment decisions on your accounts, what he's thinking and where his models are going. So that's where I want to look at it right now. Yes, interest rates are higher. Lazy money's getting played a little bit more, but it's never kept up with inflation. If you've got that money that you're trying to figure out what you want to do with it, give us a call. Let's sit down and talk about it. Or if you've got one of those old annuities, you might have bought from somebody else before you came to us, or you might have got it from somebody after you came to us. Give us a call now. Let's look and see if that's still the best thing for you in the markets. So again, I would like to thank everybody. Again, we're having a wonderful year. Referrals have been great. We love working with people like you. You know, we love working with friends and family. And I want to thank everybody who's become a part of our family this year. And I want to say again, thank you very much. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.